You know when you're shooting a video and you get your lines down perfectly, and then you go back to watch the video and then you realize that you didn't connect your microphone? Yeah. Roll the thing. Hi everybody, it's Andy, and welcome again to my office in Modesto, California. I'm an attorney licensed to practice law in California as well as New York. In this video, I'm going to go over California legal separations. Now, the genesis of this video I'm a bit embarrassed to describe, but here it goes. So in 2015, I put out a video, it was one of my first videos I think, about California's legal residency requirements in order to do divorces. So the basic idea is that you can't just move to California to do a divorce. You have to live here for a certain amount of time. Every state in the United States, I'm pretty sure, has a residency requirement like that for divorces. If you are not in California and your state does not have that, leave me a comment down below. I haven't checked every state, but of the ones that I have looked at, they do have a residency requirement. So anyway, in that residency requirement video for California from 2015, I mentioned a video that I have on legal separations in California. At the time, I did not have it, and at the time, I must have intended to, shoot that right away or something. But suffice it to say, I never did. Fast forward to 2018. This is almost June of 2018, and here I am finally shooting the video. So that's the basic background of it. So the basic idea behind a legal separation is that it basically is like a 90% divorce in California. Most of the time, to be honest with you, I think a lot of times people use the term separation, separated, incorrectly in California. So legal separation, as I'm about to describe, goes over a court process, there's paperwork involved, a judge's signature is required, etc. So that's what legal separation actually means. Most of the time, I think most people who use the term separated or legally separated sometimes, what they actually mean is probably estranged. Yeah. So the basic situation will be, okay, well, husband, wife, for example, and, after a certain amount of time, the relationship, kind of dies out, and maybe there's an argument one day, and one spouse moves out, and they basically, even though they're still married, no property division has been decided, etc., the two spouses basically kind of go off and lead separate lives. The wife might get a new boyfriend, the husband might get a new girlfriend, etc. And they are, for all intents and purposes, divorced, single, etc. They just have never gone through the legal process. Separation, to call that situation legally separated, is actually not technically correct. Estrangement, I think, is probably a better term, a more accurate term. So anyway, but estrangement aside, that 2015 video aside, this video, like I said, is going to go over California legal separations, and as I just described, it's basically a 90% divorce. So the paperwork, for example, is the same. The court process is, basically the same. A while ago, I also put out a video on California status-only divorces too. I'm going to play that, kind of over my shoulder here and link it down below. I'm going to link that residency requirement video from 2015 down below also. But in the status-only divorce video, I basically described a divorce as being a series of, items on a checklist, let's say. So if you have, for example, property that needs to get divided, that'll be one of the items on that checklist. If there are, say, minor children in your relationship, that has to get decided, child support, child visitation, stuff like that. Alimony, if alimony is warranted in your situation, that will have to get decided also. So that big checklist of items contains stuff like that. And a legal separation will actually decide those items also, so property division, child support, etc. But the one item, I guess, that a legal separation that does not resolve basically is status. So this is like the 10% between a legal separation and a divorce, for instance, that are different, or that's different. So at the end of a divorce, you're basically single. You're legally single. If you want to get married again, for instance, later on, if the opportunity or the desire, etc., arises, a divorce will allow you to do that. So I mean, I would guess, I guess, that a lot of times people go through a divorce because they want the ability to get married again later on. They want to find love again, etc. A legal separation, unfortunately, does not allow you to do that. So a legal separation will resolve child custody, property division, all that stuff that I described earlier. But a legal separation does not determine status. So at the end of a divorce, all the stuff about property, children, etc. is decided. And you're single again. If you want to get married again, you can. At the end of a legal separation, property, children, all that stuff is decided. Alimony and all that stuff is decided. Status, however, is not. So you cannot get married again later on if you want to. So, yeah, I guess. So some of you might be wondering, okay, well, if legal separation is 90% of a divorce and I can't get married again after legal separation, why do people do legal separations? Why don't they just do divorces? So my experience in this part of California, I've been doing divorces 7 years now, almost 7.5 years. And in my experience kind of so far, that's the case basically. Very few people actually do legal separations. So I want to say over the last 7.5 years or so, I've done maybe 80 divorces, 75, 80 roughly. So in that same time, I have done basically half of a legal separation. In legal separation, the reason I call it a half is because in that very first video, the one about residency requirements that I kind of played way at the beginning of this video, in that video I go over 6 months that you have to live in California, 3 months that you have to live in the county. If for whatever reason you don't meet one or both of those requirements, but you still want to file for divorce, what do? And the answer is you file for legal separation first. So let's say that you have moved to California, but you've only lived here 45 days, not 6 months. You've only lived in the county in which you have lived in for, say, 3 weeks, not 3 months. What do? The answer, you file for legal separation first, you reserve a case number, you begin the court process, and then after the clock has run out, I guess after you've met the clock, met the 3 months, met the 6 months, then you go and you convert your case to a regular divorce case and you finish it out. That's basically the fact pattern of that case that I did the legal separation for. Started off as a legal separation, converted to a divorce, I finished it as a divorce. So that's why I call it a half legal separation, I guess. So, yeah, I guess so. That's kind of the summary in a nutshell. Legal separation, 90% of a divorce. The only thing that remains basically is status. If you want to get married again after legal separation, you can't. So one reason why people actually do legal separation is that they don't meet the time requirements, the residency requirements for California. That's one big reason. The other reasons that I've seen, again, haven't actually dealt with this on a case, but the other reasons I've seen tend to fall into a couple categories. So number one is that if the person has a religious reason, for instance, that kind of not really prevents them, I guess, but kind of makes divorce, like the term divorce, really unattractive for some reason. Legal separation, sometimes can be a good compromise. It can get them, 90% of the relief that they need, but for religious reasons, they cannot, be single again, via a divorce. So religious reasons is one big reason. Culture, same idea. For whatever reason, that person's culture may just view divorce really badly, but, legal separation is perfectly fine, let's say. Family reasons, same idea. Maybe in their family, divorce is just really bad for some reason. And lastly, of course, a personal reason. This person may just be okay remaining legally married, but legally separated. Each person's different, each person's situation is different. So I will tell you one thing that is actually different between a legal separation and a divorce. And there's a family code section that applies here in California. It's section 2345, which I'll write over here and link down below with those 2 videos that I played earlier. There'll be a link down below in the description. But 2345 goes over the consent requirement. So probably best to illustrate with an example. So let's say, for instance, that a wife files for legal separation. She files the petition, goes to court, pays the fees, opens a case, gets a case number. Okay. So the responding spouse, the husband, for example, is served the legal separation papers. And scenario number 1, I suppose, is that the husband is served and does nothing during the 30 days in which he has to file a response, let's say. So for those of you, I guess, who are kind of familiar with this scenario, that's basically a default case. So in a default case, the court can grant a legal separation because the petitioning party has asked for it. So that's fine. So that's scenario number one. Scenario number two is that the husband is served the legal separation papers. The husband files a response saying, hey, legal separation's fine, let's go ahead and do that. And if that's the case, if there's an agreement between the parties, then the court can do a legal separation. That's basically what 2345 says. It's a consent requirement. So that's scenario number two. Legal separation is like allowed, basically. Scenario number three, unfortunately, is where 2345 can cause problems. So scenario number three is, the wife has fought for legal separation, the papers have been served on the husband, but the husband, for whatever reason, basically says, hey, I'm not going to do this legal separation stuff. I've done my research, I've looked it up. The legal separation is basically a 90% divorce. Why don't we just do the divorce and be done with each other? So I'm not going to agree to that, I want a divorce. In that situation, unfortunately, the court cannot do a legal separation. So legal separation can only be done if the parties agree to it, that's scenario number two, or if the responding party does not voice an opinion, kind of one way or the other, that's scenario number one. So in scenario one and scenario two, legal separation is fine. In scenario three, legal separation is not allowed because of the consent requirement in 2345. So, I guess hopefully all of that made sense. To kind of summarize, legal separations in California are pretty rare in my kind of experience. If your experience is different, the circles that you run in, it's just more common than it is for me, leave me a comment down below. I'm always kind of interested to see what people's experiences are. But in my experience at least, legal separations are relatively rare. Most people, when they mention the term legally separated, they usually mean estranged, like they have not actually gone through the court process, filed papers, paid fees, etc. They actually probably mean legally estranged or estranged. So a legal separation, if you actually want to go through the formal court process, it's basically a 90% divorce. The one bit at the end that legal separation does not do for you is it does not make you legally single. If you want to get married again after legal separation, you can't, because otherwise it would be bigamous. So I guess a couple reasons why people do legal separations. There's kind of the religious, cultural, personal, family sort of reason. It's also fairly common for people who don't meet the residency requirement in California to do a legal separation first. And then after they meet the residency requirement, then they go do the legal separation. That's pretty common. And then lastly, of course, there's a consent requirement under Family Code Section 2345 in California. So again, hopefully all of that helped. Apologize for waiting 3 years to shoot this video. Hopefully this helps you, and go ahead and comment, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. And I will talk to you guys next time. Thanks.